What I'm about to tell you is a story of betrayal, corporate greed, and the most satisfying revenge I've ever witnessed. This is the true story of Jonathan Cain, a 37-year-old man who built an empire with his bare hands, only to watch it crumble in a single meeting. But here's the thing about Jonathan. He didn't just get mad, he got even. And when the dust settled, his enemies wished they had never crossed him. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. Jonathan Cain wasn't your typical tech executive. While others climbed corporate ladders through politics and presentations, Jonathan built his kingdom through pure, relentless hustle. For 16 years, he transformed the West Coast division of Technocore Solutions from a failing startup into a $12 million revenue machine. Picture this: a man who knew every client's birthday, every contract renewal date, every pain point in their business. Jonathan didn't just sell software, he sold relationships. He sold trust. And in the cutthroat world of enterprise technology, that made him untouchable, or so he thought. Technocore's West Coast office was Jonathan's domain. He'd personally recruited every team member, from senior developers to junior account managers. His division consistently outperformed all others, pulling in contracts with giants like Pacific Financial, Meridian Healthcare, and Apex Manufacturing. These weren't just clients. They were partners who specifically requested Jonathan for every major decision. But success, as Jonathan would soon learn, can be a double-edged sword. The acquisition happened fast. Global Tech Industries, a massive conglomerate with a reputation for aggressive cost-cutting, swooped in and bought Technocore for $180 million. The announcement came on a Tuesday morning, and by Friday, everything had changed. Enter Marcus Webb, 32 years old, MBA from Wharton, and the kind of executive who saw human relationships as inefficiencies to be optimized. Marcus arrived with his team of consultants, armed with analytics dashboards and restructuring plans that would make Gordon Gekko proud. Jonathan's first red flag should have been the meeting invitation. Strategic alignment discussion, scheduled for exactly 15 minutes. In 16 years, Jonathan had never had a meeting shorter than an hour. Real business, real relationships, they took time. But Marcus Webb didn't deal in relationships. He dealt in numbers. "We're streamlining operations to maximize stakeholder value," Marcus announced, his voice as cold as his handshake. "Your position is redundant, effective immediately." Redundant. After 16 years of building something extraordinary, Jonathan Cain had become redundant. But here's what Marcus couldn't understand, about what Jonathan had built. It wasn't just a sales division, it was an ecosystem. Every client relationship, every team member, every process had been carefully cultivated over nearly 2 decades. Security escorted Jonathan to his office to pack his belongings. As he loaded his personal items into a cardboard box, he noticed something telling. Sarah from HR couldn't look him in the eye. Tom from accounting actually turned around and walked the other way. These weren't just colleagues. They were people who had watched Jonathan build something special, and now they were watching it get dismantled by a 32-year-old who'd been there for exactly 6 weeks. The handwritten thank you notes from clients. The industry awards. The photo of his team celebrating their biggest contract win. 16 years of legacy fitting into a single box. But Jonathan didn't make a scene. He didn't threaten or rage. He simply nodded to security, walked to his car, and drove away. What Marcus Webb didn't realize was that he'd just made the biggest mistake of his career. You see, Jonathan Cain wasn't just losing a job. He was losing his life's work. And men like Jonathan don't just disappear quietly into the night. The morning after his termination, Jonathan sat in his home office staring at his phone. No messages from work. Former work. His wife Lisa brought him coffee and squeezed his shoulder. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "They have no idea what they've done," Jonathan replied. And that's when it hit him. The strange clarity that comes when you realize you've been playing by someone else's rules for too long. Jonathan opened his personal laptop, not the company-issued one they'd already wiped, and looked at his contacts. 16 years of genuine connections. Personal phone numbers, direct emails, relationships that existed outside of corporate databases and org charts. "Jonathan, we just got notification about organizational changes at Technocore. Please tell me you're not affected." It was Rachel Morrison from Pacific Financial, Technocore's biggest client. The concern in her voice was genuine, and Jonathan knew why. He'd personally overseen their digital transformation, working 14-hour days to make sure their system migration went flawlessly. When their servers crashed during a critical update, Jonathan had been there at 2 a.m., coordinating with his team to get them back online. "I was let go yesterday," Jonathan said quietly. The silence that followed spoke volumes. "Who's taking over our account?" Rachel finally asked. "They didn't say. I assume someone from Marcus's team." Another pause. "Jonathan, I need to be frank. Our board only approved this contract because of you. The pricing was 20% higher than competitors, but you always delivered. You always made problems disappear before they became problems." By noon, Jonathan had received calls from every major client. The pattern was identical: shock, concern, and barely concealed panic about the future of their partnerships. Jonathan didn't badmouth Technocore. He didn't have to. He simply answered their questions honestly. Yes, he'd been terminated. No, he wasn't aware of any transition plan. Yes, he was considering his options. That evening, Marcus Webb called. Jonathan let it go to voicemail. Then he called again. And again. Finally, on the fourth call, Jonathan picked up. "Jonathan, we need to talk," Marcus said, his voice noticeably different from their last meeting. "Some concerns have come up with key accounts." "I'm sure your team can handle it," Jonathan replied calmly. "That's just it. Pacific Financial is threatening to terminate their contract. They're saying they only worked with us because of you." Jonathan watched a hawk circle outside his window. "That's their decision to make. Look, maybe we moved too quickly with the restructuring. The board is concerned about revenue impact. We could discuss a consulting arrangement to help with the transition." For a moment, Jonathan considered it. Easy money while he figured out his next move. But something felt off about Marcus's sudden change of heart. "I appreciate the offer, but I need time to think about it." But Jonathan Kane had already made his decision. He just wasn't ready to show his hand yet. What happened next was beautiful in its simplicity. Jonathan didn't need to sabotage Technocore. He didn't need to poach clients or badmouth the company. He simply existed, and the market responded. Within 48 hours, 3 major clients had sent formal letters indicating they would not renew their contracts. The reason? Loss of key relationship personnel and concerns about service continuity. Marcus was in full panic mode. He'd built his entire restructuring plan around the assumption that clients were interchangeable, that relationships could be managed through CRM systems and automated processes. He was about to learn a very expensive lesson about the difference between managing accounts and building partnerships. "Jonathan, I think there's been a misunderstanding," Marcus said during his 6th call that week. "We value everything you've built here. The board has authorized me to offer you a senior VP position. Better title, better package than before. Jonathan almost laughed. Almost. I'll consider it. But he'd already made 3 other calls that day. The first was to David Chen, CEO of Innovative Solutions, a mid-sized competitor who'd been trying to recruit Jonathan for years. The second was to his lawyer, just to confirm what he already knew about his non-compete clause. The third was to his core team at Technocore. Emergency meeting? Marcus had announced to the remaining staff. We need all client contact information for Jonathan's accounts. But here's what Marcus didn't understand about loyalty. You can't demand it. You can't restructure it. You can't optimize it with a spreadsheet. Jonathan's team, the people he'd hired, trained, and mentored for years, suddenly developed collective amnesia. Contact information got misplaced. Client preferences became unclear. Response times slowed to a crawl. By the end of the week, Jonathan had received an email from Technocore's legal department. The subject line read, "Violation of non-disclosure and non-solicitation agreements." The email was full of legal threats and intimidation tactics. They accused Jonathan of actively sabotaging client relationships and violating his termination agreement. They threatened litigation if he didn't cease all contact with former clients. Jonathan forwarded the email to his lawyer without comment. The response came back within hours. This is corporate theater. Your contract has no non-solicitation clause, and the non-compete only prevents you from joining a direct competitor for 12 months. They're trying to intimidate you because they're desperate. That's when Jonathan knew he had them exactly where he wanted them. Jonathan's response was swift and surgical. Within 24 hours, he'd accepted David Chen's offer at Innovative Solutions, with one condition. He wanted to bring his entire core team with him. Done, David said without hesitation. When can you start? 2 weeks, and I'll need official offer letters for all 6 of my people today. That evening, Jonathan called his team one by one. He explained everything: the termination, the restructuring plan, the legal threats. Most importantly, he offered them a way out. All 6 said yes immediately. But Jonathan wasn't finished. He'd spent 16 years building relationships, and those relationships were about to pay dividends in ways Marcus Webb couldn't have imagined. The first domino fell when Pacific Financial announced they were terminating their Technocore contract early, citing irreconcilable differences in service philosophy. The termination fee alone cost Technocore $800,000. The second domino was Meridian Healthcare. They didn't just terminate their contract. They demanded a full refund for services not yet rendered, claiming Technocore had failed to provide the key personnel specified in their agreement. By the third domino, Apex Manufacturing, Marcus Webb knew he was in serious trouble. The company's stock price had dropped 15% in a single week. The board was asking questions, and every answer led back to the same conclusion. Firing Jonathan Kane had been a catastrophic mistake. Marcus showed up at Jonathan's house unannounced on a Saturday morning. Jonathan was washing his car in the driveway when the black sedan pulled up. "We need to talk," Marcus said, stepping out of the car. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by something that looked suspiciously like desperation. "I'm a little busy," Jonathan replied, continuing to rinse his car. "The board is meeting Monday. They want to know how we're going to fix this." Jonathan turned off the hose and looked at Marcus directly. "Fix what?" "Don't play games with me, Jonathan. You know exactly what's happening. Clients are leaving, team members are resigning, and somehow you're at the center of all of it." "I haven't violated any agreement," Jonathan said calmly. I've simply moved on with my life. This is corporate suicide, Marcus said, his voice rising. You're destroying everything we built. Jonathan's expression didn't change. You didn't build anything, Marcus. You inherited something valuable and threw it away in a 15-minute meeting. Name your price, Marcus said finally. CEO position, equity stake, complete autonomy. Just come back and fix this. Jonathan picked up his car keys and walked toward his front door. Some things can't be fixed, Marcus. They can only be replaced. What happened next was the most beautiful part of Jonathan's story. He didn't just rebuild his career, he rebuilt his entire industry network stronger than before. At Innovative Solutions, Jonathan wasn't just another executive. He was a partner with equity and complete control over his division. Within 30 days, 4 of his former clients had signed new contracts, not with Technocore, but with Innovative Solutions. The contracts were more lucrative than ever. Without Technocore's corporate overhead and Marcus's aggressive pricing strategies, Jonathan could offer better service at competitive rates. His clients weren't just satisfied, they were thrilled. But the real masterpiece was still to come. 6 months after his termination, Jonathan was reviewing quarterly reports when his assistant knocked on his door. "You might want to see this," she said, handing him a tablet. It was a financial news article about Technocore Solutions. The headline read, "CEO Marcus Webb resigns amid revenue collapse." The article detailed how Technocore had missed quarterly projections by 35%. The West Coast division, Jonathan's former territory, had lost nearly 60% of its revenue. The board had accepted Marcus's resignation, effective immediately. Jonathan handed the tablet back without comment. "You don't seem surprised," his assistant noted. "Hard to build relationships with spreadsheets," Jonathan replied. That afternoon, Jonathan received a LinkedIn message from Eleanor Ross, Technocore's board chairwoman. "The board is prepared to offer you the CEO position. Complete autonomy, significant equity, board seat. Name your terms." Jonathan stared at the message for a long moment, then closed his laptop without responding. 3 days later, the news broke. Innovative Solutions had acquired Technocore's West Coast division in a strategic asset purchase. The price? A fraction of what it had been worth just months earlier. They had no choice. David Chen explained to Jonathan. It was either sell to us or watch it collapse entirely. Jonathan never had to strike back directly. The market had done it for him. His relationships, his reputation, his 16 years of building something real, they had all protected him in ways no corporate structure ever could. 1 year after his termination, Jonathan Kane sat in his new office, reviewing the most successful quarter in his division's history. The same team that had been redundant at Technocore was now driving record profits at Innovative Solutions. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Marcus. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted to say I'm sorry. I learned a lot from what happened. I hope you can forgive me." Jonathan stared at the message for a moment, then deleted it without responding. Some lessons are too expensive to forgive. That evening, Jonathan drove past the old Technocore building. The Innovative Solutions logo now hung where the Technocore sign had once been. The building looked the same, but everything inside had changed. They'd rehired most of the staff who'd been laid off during Marcus's optimization. They'd recovered client relationships that had been damaged during the transition. The division now generated more revenue than it ever had under Technocore. Jonathan parked across the street and watched employees leaving for the day. They looked happy, engaged, purposeful. the way his team had looked for 16 years before Marcus Webb arrived. "Dad, how's the new job going?" His daughter Emma was calling from college. "Good," Jonathan replied, "building something that will last." The same words he'd used for 16 years at Technocore. But this time, he knew they were true. Later that evening, Jonathan received one final text from his former colleague at Technocore. "Thought you'd want to know. The rest of the company just got acquired by Megacorp. Complete buyout. Nothing left of the original Technocore." Jonathan set his phone down and walked out to his deck. The evening air was cool, filled with the promise of tomorrow. He thought about Marcus Webb, wondered briefly where he was now. He hoped the young executive had learned something from the experience, though he wasn't optimistic. He thought about all those years building something meaningful, the late nights, the client dinners, the team meetings. The sacrifices had been real, but so were the relationships he'd built. In the end, those relationships had followed him, not because he'd asked them to, but because they'd built something authentic together. No restructuring plan could erase that. No efficiency expert could optimize it away. The next morning, Jonathan arrived at Innovative Solutions early. He reviewed quarterly projections, now 40% above target. He checked client retention numbers, 98%, the highest in industry history. David Chen stopped by his office. "Board approved your proposal. Employee ownership program starts next quarter." Jonathan nodded. "The team will do it right." "You know," David said, "when we hired you, I thought we were just getting a talented executive and some valuable client relationships. I didn't realize we were getting a completely different way of doing business." "Relationships over transactions," Jonathan replied. "Always." After David left, Jonathan opened his desk drawer and pulled out a small trophy, a gift from Pacific Financial after their successful system migration. He placed it on his shelf next to photos of his new team. He didn't need revenge. He didn't need vindication. He just needed to build something that would last. And this time, he had partners who understood the difference between managing accounts and building relationships. This time, he had everything he needed to succeed. So what can we learn from Jonathan Kane's story? That corporate loyalty is often a one-way street. That relationships matter more than spreadsheets. That revenge is a dish best served cold. Maybe. But I think the real lesson is simpler. Authenticity always wins in the end. Jonathan Kane didn't succeed because he was vindictive or manipulative. He succeeded because he spent 16 years building something real. Genuine relationships based on trust, competence, and mutual respect. When that foundation was threatened, it protected him in ways no corporate structure ever could. Marcus Webb failed not because he was evil, but because he confused efficiency with effectiveness. He thought he could optimize away the human element of business. He learned, too late, that some things can't be measured in a spreadsheet. In the end, Jonathan Kane's story isn't really about revenge. It's about the power of authenticity in a world that often rewards the opposite. It's about building something that will last. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, smash that like button and subscribe for more tales of corporate justice. And remember, in a world of Marcus Webbs, be a Jonathan Kane.